Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Star Wars Abridged. Today we are going to be going through and covering Chapter 19 of Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire. Now, in the couple chapters leading up to this one, we learned that Luke's X-Wing broke down because of a confrontation he had with the Chimera, and he was ultimately found and picked up by Talon Karrde on Karrde's ship, the Wild Card, and the last we saw from him, he was talking with Karrde before he was stunned, and we're going to be picking up from there. Just a little bit of a spoiler, this chapter will be the first interaction and meeting between Mara, Jade, and Luke, so that's very exciting. This is going to be a bit of a longer video because it's a big chapter, but there's a lot of important stuff in here. So, without further ado, let's get into Chapter 19. But make sure that you are subscribed and hit the thumbs up button if you enjoy this video. So, at the start of Chapter 19, we learn that we are staying with Luke Skywalker for the time being, and as the chapter starts, we see Luke start to wake up from being stunned. He tells himself that he must have also been drugged, because he can tell that he was knocked out for multiple days, and no stun weapon that he knows of can keep people knocked out for that long. However, just as soon as Luke wakes up, he falls back asleep, and then a little bit of time passes and he wakes up again, but this time he is in a bed with a view of a forest outside of the room that he's in. Like he's able to look outside of the window of this room and he just sees a forest. All of a sudden, Luke, who is very dazed and his memory is hazy and he's not really fully woken up yet, he's trying to wake himself up, but he hears a woman call out. Luke, who is startled, turns to look at her and realizes that he can't sense or feel her through the Force. And then his worst fear sets in. He can't sense or feel anything. So the woman can see that Luke is upset by this, and Luke is at this point trying to get on his feet. He's trying to get up out of the bed just to get a little bit more strength and to clear his mind a little bit. And as he is trying to get up, he looks at the woman and he tells her that he knows her name is Mara Jade. She, in a cold, expressionless tone, tells him that this does not impress her at all because she knows that Karrde told Luke about her, which, if we'll remember from Chapter 18, Karrde mentioned that Mara Jade has a bitter hatred for Luke. Luke then sort of sarcastically thanks her for finding his X-Wing, and then she says there is really only two options for Luke at this point. They can either turn him over to the Empire, or they can just kill him themselves. As Luke makes it to his feet, he notices that Mara has his lightsaber attached to her belt. He wonders if maybe she could be a Jedi herself, especially since she was able to find him out there in open space, and if maybe she is the one who is making Luke unable to sense anything through the Force, if she's somehow manipulating the Force to make it to where Luke can't sense her, sense anything else. He's thinking, if she is a Jedi, this could be her. However, Luke doesn't have much time to think because Mara tells him that Karrde wants to talk with him, and the two end up leaving the room. As Luke and Mara leave the room, Luke realizes that he's in this barracks-style compound, almost like a prison, with other identical rooms on both sides of this long hallway that goes for however long, it doesn't really tell us. He and Mara are leaving that building, the barracks-style building, and they're walking toward another building. As they're doing so, Luke is looking around and trying to just take everything in and see what he can spot, and he sees some ships that are like the Wild Card, but he also spots his X-Wing. Luke then realizes that he has absolutely no idea where R2-D2 is, but he doesn't panic, and he decides that it would probably be a better idea to ask Karrde about R2 than it would be to ask Mara, especially because, she hates him so much. Luke and Mara get to the main building in this big complex of buildings and whatever this place is, and when they walk inside, Luke is just completely taken aback and blown away. They walk into this massive room that is described as looking like something just straight out of a legend. Huge ceilings, dark woodwork, there's sculptures everywhere, but The big eye catcher is in the very center of the room, and it is this huge, massive tree that just is growing right through the middle of this room, almost reaching the top. And it says that this tree's branches are spreading out, and it's like just this massive thing that's covering this entire room. It's like it's the life, the heart of the room. So Luke is looking around, he's taking all of this in, and as he is, he hears a voice call to him. It's Talon Karrde. Luke notices that Karrde is sitting beneath that big tree, and when Luke sees him, he ushers Luke over and asks him to sit with him. Luke walks over to where Karrde is, and Karrde speaks to him in this charming, but kind of at the same time intimidating way. He's not trying to tower over Luke and make him feel smothered or anything, but at the same time, he's also letting Luke know that, he is firmly in charge. Like, this is his operation, this is his place. Doesn't matter that Luke's a Jedi, he's in charge. But, like I said, at the same time, he's still kind of treating Luke with some sort of respect. So Karrde offers Luke a drink and asks Luke to sit, and as he begins to do so, Karrde's Vornskers, which we met way at the beginning of the book in like chapter 3 or something, they're like dogs. They're like these big dogs. These Vornskers start growling at Luke, which kind of makes Luke a little bit afraid. He's like, I don't know if I want to really sit down and get around these things because they look like they could probably tear my face off. So he's a little untrustworthy of them, and I think Karrde can see this. It doesn't really tell us that Karrde sees this, but he tries to calm the animals down, and they just aren't having it. They're not listening to him. He's trying to get them to quit growling, quit bothering Luke, but he has no success, so he asks somebody to come and take them away. Karrde then apologizes to Luke about the animals and then gestures for Luke to sit again, and Luke does. Karrde then hands Luke a drink and tells him that it is a stimulant, and Luke begins to drink it. As he is drinking, he asks Karrde about R2. Where R2 is he safe? Is everything okay? Karrde tells Luke that yes, he is safe, and he is currently being held in one of the equipment rooms for safekeeping. And Luke is like, well, would it be possible for me to see him? I would just like to make sure for myself. Karrde says that can probably be arranged, that he can probably go see R2, just not at the present moment. Luke then suggests to Karrde that they just send him back to the New Republic. He's like, whatever you're being paid, whatever the Empire would pay for me, the New Republic will pay you double. Karrde is kind of just straightforward and honest with Luke and says money's not really the issue here, it's politics. If the Empire finds out that they have Luke and let him go, that would hurt Karrde's operation and Karrde's business, because part of their jurisdiction, well, not really jurisdiction, but part of the areas and territories they operate in are imperial. So if the Empire were to find out that they had Luke and they let him go, his operations and business on the imperial-based worlds would be gone. He would have no business there. Luke then counters that point and tells Karrde that, well, if you don't give me over, then the New Republic worlds are going to be the same as what you're saying with the Empire worlds. They won't let you operate in those worlds. But Karrde kind of has already thought this out a little bit and says that the New Republic doesn't have any idea what happened to Luke, but the Empire does. So for all they know, for all the New Republic knows, Luke has just gone missing. But the Empire knows that someone would have found Luke and given him up because they know about his X-Wing breaking down. Karrde then says that they were the ones to be lucky enough to find Luke, and the Empire doesn't know that they have him yet. They've not contacted the Empire. Nobody knows that Luke's there except for the people that were on the wild card. This causes Luke to wonder exactly why his powers are gone and why he can't connect with the Force. And he asks Karrde about that, and Karrde says that, he can't really reveal that secret at this time, but maybe if Luke has a secret to trade, possibly about the New Republic or about the Jedi, just any kind of a secret, that he would trade with him, he would tell him. Luke says that he really doesn't have anything to say, so Karrde then tells Luke that he's going to make a deal with him. If Luke will tell him why the Empire wants him so badly, he'll tell him why he can't use the Force. Luke tells Card, just ask the Empire. Why wouldn't you just ask the Empire why they want me? And Card then reveals that they weren't actually looking for Luke and weren't working for the Empire. They weren't out searching for Luke because of the Empire's bounty. They just happened to stumble upon him and find him. And then they learned of the bounty that the Empire has out on him. So Luke hearing this kind of gives him a glimmer of hope. And he says to Card that if they'll let him go and pretend that this never happened, he won't say a single word about them to the New Republic, and he won't tell anyone about Card or his operation. He'll just let him go and run his business as he pleases. However, Card tells Luke that the Empire would find out anyway that Luke was there with them, and he says that they have a new commander who can find out absolutely anything. And as we know, that is Thrawn, and Card is exactly right. If Luke were to be let go, Thrawn would know immediately. Like, he would figure out somehow immediately that they had Luke. It wouldn't even be, there would be no way around it. So Card then tells Luke that he thinks the best bet would be for them to give the Empire what they want while still letting Luke go. And he asks Luke again why the Empire wants him. Like, this is what's really important to Card right now. He wants to know why the Empire is so interested in Luke. And at this point, Luke, well, that this whole time Luke has been honest with Card, but he continues his honesty and says he has absolutely no idea why they want him. But he does tell Card about Leia and tells him that the Empire seems to want her too, because he tells him about the kidnapping attempts that happened to Leia on Bimasari and Fash. This causes Card to kind of put two and two together and says that it seems like they want the Jedi. Luke is a Jedi, Leia is a Jedi in training, so it seems like they're motivated by something to do with the Jedi. Card then backtracks the conversation a little bit and talks about the compromise that he wants to make with Luke, and he presents the idea that they could give R2 over to the Imperials, since R2 holds a lot of information about the New Republic and about the Jedi, specifically Luke and Leia in general, and that if they can do that, they'll let Luke go. But we all know Luke, he obviously does not like this idea because of how close he is with R2. So Luke's like, I don't know about that, probably not. Card then tells Luke that he has a contact on Fash, and that he'll just catch up with him and see if he has any information about why the Empire wants Luke and Leia, that, he can get him to ask around on the planet just to see if there's anything he can find out. Then Card tells Luke that for the time being, he will have to remain there on the planet as their guest. The conversation for the time being then starts to come to a close, and Card says that he hopes they can work out an agreement sometime soon. Card then reveals to Luke that he won't be able to rely on his Jedi powers to help him escape, and says that there are more Salamiri out in the planet than inside the compound. So that is when it is revealed to us that that's the reason that Luke doesn't have his powers right now. There are Salamiri everywhere. And as we learned in previous chapters, Salamiri are these little animals, these little creatures that kind of look like a lizard or a salamander, that completely negate force abilities. Like, they emit this aura, this bubble, and anything within that bubble, so to speak, the force just doesn't work there. So Luke is completely confused at the mention of Salamiri, and he asks Card about them, and Card kind of explains the premise to Luke and says that it's why he can't use the Force, and Luke says, well, I've never even heard of them. This causes Luke to just kind of look up, and when he does so, he sees several of these little creatures in that giant tree above them, and then he asks Card how he's so sure that they're the cause of limiting his Force abilities and not something else. Card then reveals to Luke that he had some on board the wild card, and that's how Luke couldn't sense someone walk up behind him and stun him. Card and Luke then just make a bit more small talk, and then Card bids Luke a good evening. Mara gets Luke up and starts to lead him back to his room, but Luke gives a last-ditch offer to Card and tells him that if they want to pretend like none of this ever happened, they don't even have to give him to the New Republic. They can just go out and leave him where they found him, in space. He'll deal with anyone else that comes across, including the Empire, and he'll just take his chances. Card, who is kind of surprised by Luke's offer, says to him that he'll at least keep the option in mind. Mara then escorts Luke back to his room, and she tells him that if he tries to escape, an alarm will be triggered and he will either be killed by the Vornskers or by her. So she then leaves the room, and Luke is just kind of sitting there looking out that little window into the forest that he has in his room. And he starts to get a bit afraid, but he fights the urge to let it take over. He kind of pushes that fear back down and walks back to his bed. However, he thinks that there has got to be some sort of way to get out of this little prison, and that if he can just stay alive, if he can just buy time for himself, he can figure out just how he can escape. So that marks the end of chapter 19, and I know that this was a long chapter, this was a pretty lengthy video, and that there was a lot of information and a lot of content packed into this one chapter, but there's just so much important stuff here. It, it was too hard for me to even try to cut a lot of things out of this chapter just because everything is so important. But I hope you enjoyed the chapter. I hope you enjoyed the first interaction between Mara Jade and Luke. They will, spoiler alert, definitely be interacting a lot more in the future. But as always, I thank you for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I hope you're enjoying this book. If you enjoyed this video, make sure that you leave a thumbs up and make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. If you're interested in checking out an abridged version of Charles Soule's Light of the Jedi, which is the first book in the High Republic series, that playlist is on my channel. Go ahead and go through that book with us. But as always, thank you for watching. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and may the Force be with you.